What's up, everyone? George Balekji here with Foxboro Rush. But hey, check out the latest episode of Boston Has Entered the Chat. It's me and Annabelle Hasselbeck over on that show. And we're breaking down how the Lions season could be so disappointing. Yes, so disappointing, all because of one loss. It was Super Bowl or bust for that team. They didn't even make it back to the NFC Championship game. What does that mean for Dan Campbell and the Lions? And how did Jared Goff, how did it happen that he had his worst game of the season at the worst time? But also on the flip side, what that win and this run so far means for Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn. Most significantly, Cliff Kingsbury's. He will surely be a name that's floated for head coaching candidates. Then we go over to the Chiefs and talk about if we still see them as believers and legitimate contenders, as they're just still barely getting by with wins. And finally, we talk Mike Vrabel filling out his coaching staff with a lot of experience. That is Boston Has Entered the Chat, wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime, also on iHeart and Pandora. Or you can watch it on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. And if you're on Nesson's YouTube page, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well. Now, let's get to Foxboro Rush. What's up? What's happening? George Balekji here with Sean McGuire on Foxboro Rush. Sean, how we doing, my man?
I'm good, George. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. We had a tremendous Saturday in playoff football. We have another great day this Sunday as well as of the recording of this podcast. Look, everything's coming to fruition. We're seeing a lot happen. Some upsets that I wasn't expecting. Most important, we see the Commanders, a team a year removed from picking second overall into the NFC Championship game. And the Patriots, a year removed from picking third overall, picking fourth in this upcoming draft. We got that later on in the show. We're going to talk about Mike Vrabel filling out his staff, most importantly, with more than just coordinators, defensive, offensive, position coaches, but strategic hires as well. Then we go through who his main list of coordinators seems to be as reports are coming out, which means the Patriots are expediting that hiring process. And with Mike Borgonzi, now the general manager of the Titans, I come to a harsh reality. It's Elliott Wolf leading the way. We got all that and more. Sean, let's get started with the reports coming out that Mike Vrabel will have his version of the Ernie Adams joining him in New England. Someone that was with him during his time in New England. This guy is known as John Streicher, nicknamed Stretch. He spent 6 seasons in Tennessee from 2018 to 2023 alongside Vrabel, assisting in game management. Streicher currently, this past season, is working with the LA Rams. He's working as a coordinator of football strategy. Now, the history between these two goes back to Ohio State. Vrabel, of course, was a position coach there from 2011 to 2013. That's when John Streicher was an assistant coach, a student assistant coach over that time. So now it's more than coordinators, it's more than position coaches, but football strategists. As we always hear Mike Vrabel talking about being efficient with offense, being modern with the game, this is a great sign, man. Hey, there's a lot that goes into being a head coach. Game management is one of the most important. And John Streicher is a guy that's been with him throughout his career, that's aided him in beating Bill Belichick, now coming to New England. Sean, this is a serious coaching staff.
Yeah, and I just want to start by saying I need to know how tall he is, because I feel like, as a high school basketball player myself, I feel like Stretch is reserved to those guys who are, long and lanky. I don't know if it's fair just because someone's last name is approximately that or somewhat related to Stretch. I don't know if that's fair. Okay. But yeah, no, getting back to your point, and I'm glad you brought up the Belichick thing, because it kind of, when I heard this, it made me think of, there's a Part of My Take interview, Barstool Sports, Part of My Take, just from this summer, and it was Vrabel talking about, Stretch. And I'll go back to it. It was essentially, he was reflecting on, the infamous 2019 AFC divisional game at Gillette, Brady's last game as a Patriot. And they were talking about, when Vrabel was kind of playing with the NFL rule loopholes. And, we'll all remember Belichick going absolutely insane on the sidelines during that time. The Titans at the time took like 2 minutes off the clock with 6 minutes left to go. So again, that story, we all know the details behind that. But in this interview that Vrabel had with Part of My Take, he was talking about how, Stretch was in his ear during that time. And, specifically talking about how, Stretch was talking to him about how irate Belichick looked at the time. So it just goes to show, like, this guy's legitimately, in the ear of the head coach during a pivotal moment of a playoff game. He holds an important role. And it also just makes me think, how many times did we have conversations this season, on this show after the Patriots or after Gerard Mayo did something when it came to, some sort of game altering or game decisions. There was the end of half decisions that we talked about. I felt like, maybe half the season.
Yeah,
And then there was that first one, definitely sticks out, that week 2 one. I was also thinking about, the challenge that Gerard Mayo threw on a Jalen Waddle, catch, even though it would have went for a first down, regardless of whether it was called a challenge or whether it was upheld or not. And then just the other thing, kicking into the wind in overtime against the Colts. I mean, Gerard Mayo's, he essentially defended the decision by saying that the wind changed from the start of the game, which I think, we would all kind of expect. But it does, like, as silly as it is, those sorts of things, that's what, Stretch is going to be in Vrabel's ear about. This change here, make this decision. And it goes to show, like, there are so many things that circle around in a head coach's head during the course of a game. Obviously, especially with Vrabel, and you're not talking about someone that's calling plays necessarily, but he's overseeing the whole operation. And just to have someone come in that can kind of do these, maybe minute, maybe smaller, detailed sort of things. But I certainly don't want to, they might be smaller details, but I don't think his job is any smaller because of them. So I would completely agree with what you said. I think it's a great hire. It's one, as soon as Vrabel was hired by the Patriots, the name was linked to him, pretty much right off the bat. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a great move for the organization.
This is one that we've seen Sean McVay walk away from seasons, especially in 2023. He felt like the loss in Detroit, he was not being aggressive enough on fourth down. Sean McVay hired John Streicher the following season onto his staff. Sean McVay saying, I'm not aggressive enough, then you seek out this assistant coach. That's all I need to hear. You have Mike Vrabel, who's one of the most sought after and was the hottest head coaching candidate. And when he's in that role, is seen as a top 10 head coach, wanting this guy on his staff, has had him since day one in Tennessee. And then you have Sean McVay, who is, to me, not named Andy Reid, second best head coach in the NFL, going, oh, okay, I want that guy on my staff. Like, the ones that want him around him, that's all I need to know. And to your point, who Gerard Mayo had in that role was also with Bill Belichick, was like an Evan Rothstein. Evan Rothstein's nickname was the Rothinator, and he stunk at his job, and that just made up that nickname. I don't care what the nickname is. I don't care if he's actually tall or if he's just short and he's a short king like me. If this guy knows game management, can aid a coach in that, to me, that's what's important. Mike Vrabel, when he was talking to Peter King on NBC Sports, he said, Stretch has been valuable for me and our staff. He advised me on replay, timeouts, the clock. In this case, even when the field goal team was on the field for us, I thought we should go for the win. The odds of making a 50-yard field goal are probably slightly better than making a 4th and 2 at that point in the game against that defense. That is Mike Vrabel, who is as confident as they will come, as spearheaded as they come, as like, this is my decision, this I'm calling the shot. Everything they say, he's deferring to this guy. And you mentioned it the moment when he said it, my guy Stretch is up in the box, who's with the Rams now. This is him on Bussin' with the Boys. And he said he's going to help the Rams. He was like my personal assistant, game management. He was doing a lot for us. He was in my ear. He could watch. And he could watch on TV copy. And he's like, Belichick, is steaming. Look, he's telling them when to go for it on 4th down, when to settle for a field goal, when to be aggressive in this, what is the opponent's tendencies. Everything a head coach has going on, someone help with game management. When to call a timeout, something simple. It's brilliant. When not to call a timeout, you talk about Gerard Mayo choosing to kick into the wind against the Colts. Man, before the Colts scored, they're moving down. They're getting into the red area. They're basically on the goal line, about to go in. And the offense is just going. Seems like they're lost, barely going to get the snap off. And then Gerard Mayo calls an effing timeout and lets them catch your breath. Gerard Mayo, what are you doing, bud? That prevents this. This is important. We saw this past season with the Patriots why every position on the staff matters. Who is your wide receivers coach? Can they handle a wide receivers room? Have they been in that position? Have they been around NFL players? Can they bring along rookies, but also make sure to continue to coach and develop vets? Who's your offensive coordinator? Who's your offensive line coach? Do they have play calling experience? Patriots fans, like, we don't have to go in depth. It was Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. Failed. Awful. It was Tyler Hughes. It was the first time offensive line, wide receivers, QB, tight ends coach, all of this time and time again. small steps like this shows how serious Mike Vrabel is taking and filling out his coaching staff, Sean.
Yeah, without a doubt. And just to go back to your point from that Colts game, not only did Gerard Mayo not call a timeout, but then he defended the decision by essentially pointing back to Bill Belichick's decision to not call a timeout against the Seahawks
timeout in the Super Bowl, and that worked for us. It's like, buddy, you did end up calling a timeout down there, though. And
it's also like you're taking credit for something that you don't deserve credit for, which is just, that was a lot of what we experienced all season. So, I do like, and I think maybe the best way to put it is, it might be a small thing to, from the outside looking in, but the fact that, like you said, Vrabel and McVay and these guys really rely on people in this position, in this coaching position, as heavily as they do. They rely on them as heavily as they do. I think says all you need to know. And so, the Patriots are, they're getting back to that.
Yeah, and it's this, like, Streicher rejoins Mike Vrabel now that he's a head coach. What's so important, like, he learned from Mike Vrabel. He learned at Ohio State as a student assistant for 4 or 5 years, then under Vrabel, and then we're learning from in Tennessee. You go and you learn from Sean McVay, and then you come back to New England. Like, this is what's important. Guys going out to different stops. We'll get into it. Terrell Adams, one of the leaders for the defensive coordinator position, and that makes sense to me, because that was a guy that was an assistant head coach for Mike Vrabel and a D-line coach. He was D-line all 6 seasons in Tennessee, then assistant head coach. Makes sense for him to be a DC. He went to Detroit. He learned from Dan Campbell. He learned from Aaron Glenn. Now he's going to bring that value and that IQ, what I predict, over to New England. Also in the Mike Reiss article, that Mike Vrabel's expected to keep Jeremy Springer, who was a first-time special teams coordinator, came from L.A. Opponents, the Patriots ranked first in the NFL in opponents' net yards per punt. Now, they weren't punting a ton, but still, when they did, weren't netting a ton of yards. They were 27th in kick return average, but second in punt return average, 14.2 yards. A punt is seen as a play, and the minimum there is to get 10 yards on any punt return. You ask coaches, that's their vision. So that's important. You're getting a first down every time you pretty much catch a punt. That's huge for just playing the field position game and just to be efficient in offense and set up the offense for success. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, be sure to check out Foxboro Rush every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for all things Patriots football. With Mike Vrabel hired and the Patriots picking number 4 overall, the Patriots offseason is going to be a busy one. It's available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Twitch, wherever else you get your podcast. That is Foxboro Rush. Wherever you get your podcasts, new episodes dropping 3 days a week. All right, Sean, so more reports. This one coming from Ian Rappaport. He was on the NFL Insiders, was discussing the offensive coordinator targets for Mike Vrabel, and those being Thomas Brown, who was interim head coach for the Bears once Matt Eberflus was fired, and Shane Waldron, so he took over play calling duties. Marcus Brady, and then, of course, there's Josh McDaniels. So all of these being significant guys, Josh McDaniels seems to be the no-brainer. What do you think of the top 3 being on this list, Sean?
Yeah, I would say so. And we talked a little bit about this, and I wrote this last week too. When it comes to McDaniels, I think, the biggest advantage when it comes to him is just the fact that, and it sounds silly, but nobody else wants him. He's not going to go anywhere and get a head coaching job anywhere else, regardless of if he has a really good 2 or 3 years with Drake May and under Mike Vrabel. He's just, it's not that part of his career is gone, after obviously, failing as a head coach twice in 2 different situations. So I just think, like, when it really comes to McDaniel specifically, I think that's the biggest advantage he has, because you can grow, it could be Vrabel, McDaniels, May for, I don't know, are we talking 8 years at this point? 10 years down the line. And I just think, maybe going in with that mind, like, a 10-year game plan, maybe that's getting a little ahead of yourself. But I also do think, like, there's something to that. And, if you go, a guy like Thomas Brown, I mean, with the amount of experiences he's had, obviously not all of them great, but with the amount of experiences he's had, if he comes in and he, does really well with Drake May and under Vrabel, there's a very good chance that he's looking for a head coaching job, the year after, or whatever, in 26 or the year after that. So I just think, like, then you get into the aspect of, then we're resetting again, and then we're looking for the next guy. So And I do think, again, like, I think a lot of the names that I would like to see them go after are those kind of guys, the Nick Haleys. And, I saw there was a report about Josh McCown and how he wasn't going to accept anything less than, he wasn't going to go somewhere for an offensive coordinator job, is essentially what the report was. But I still think there's something to, going after those guys, because I think at some point you're trying to get them from the ground floor. But there's definitely a drawback to it as well. And that's something that they present, but that's, not something that McDaniels presents in my mind.
Yeah. When they go through those, and Marcus Brady, he spent this past season as a Chargers passing game coordinator, but his prior stops, Colts assistant quarterbacks coach, QB coach, offensive coordinator with the Colts, basically a branch off the Frank Reich coaching tree. That's what Marcus Brady provides. And that's significant, where his scheme is a blend of West Coast offense with a little bit of air raid RPO. Drake May's skill set, that's fantastic. And you bring in a Marcus Brady, he's a passing game coordinator with the Chargers. That's what sticks out to me of learned from Jim Harbaugh, was around Justin Herbert, same skill set as Drake May. Drake May is more athletic, in my opinion, than Justin Herbert, but same build, same size, same arm strength, and honestly on the same trajectory as their career. Here is what Ian Rappaport had to say when discussing the offensive coordinator targets on the Insiders.
Let's talk about some news. Let's talk about the Patriots' search for an offensive coordinator. A new coach, Mike Vrabel, has started that this week. My understanding is he spent Tuesday interviewing Thomas Brown, former Bears interim head coach, also interim offensive coordinator. Dealt with a lot in Chicago. Very impressive despite tough results on the field. Also sounds like they want to talk to Marcus Brady, who is now a Chargers assistant. That said, guys, as you know, most people believe that Josh McDaniels, former Patriots OC, actually a couple times, still lives in New England, currently not working, would be a prime candidate for that job, considered to be the favorite. I would expect Mike Vrabel to talk to him as they go about the process of trying to find a new offensive coordinator.
Now, Josh McDaniels considered to be the favorite. Look, this is a guy that if you combine it, it's his time between offensive coordinator and being a head coach, because he was a head coach with the Broncos and the Raiders, also an offensive coordinator with the St. Louis Rams when they were in St. Louis at the time. That's 18 seasons of being an NFL play caller under his belt. A guy that spent time on the defensive side of the ball with Mike Vrabel. A guy that runs a very complicated system that puts a lot on the quarterback, making a lot of calls at the line of scrimmage. With Drake May, his processing, his reads, his IQ, what he was doing after the snap was so far ahead of schedule what I predicted for him. I'm not worried about the IQ and any of that when it comes to Drake May. He has a talent. He also has the brains for the quarterback. Look, for him to be the favorite, it shocks nobody. And to me, it just boils down to, is this who Mike Vrabel wants, though? Like, he has to be 100% on board with his coaching staff. I don't want this to be a Kraft hire. I don't want it to be Robert Kraft or Jonathan Kraft pushing it on him. Someone he's comfortable with. Someone he sees will work well with Drake May. And what you get with Josh McDaniels, and I do believe it. Look, there are a lot of dumb owners out there that Josh McDaniels will have success with Drake May, and they're going to think, do I hire him as my head coach? There's a lot of dumb owners, but hopefully they're not dumb enough to forget that what he did with the Broncos, before his office was fully decorated, pissed off Jay Cutler, ended up trading him away because he wanted to get Matt Castle in the door, and drafted Tim Tebow. What he did with the Colts, leaving them literally at the altar. Hey, yeah, I'll take that job. And then last minute going, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to stay. And then when he was with the Raiders, lasting a season and a half, and again, just not being a head coach. What makes Josh McDaniels beneficial for Mike Vrabel is that I don't think he's going to go anywhere for 5 years. Like, he is with Drake May. Maybe in 5 years, that stink leaves him, and then he becomes a head coach again. But if you go like a Clint Kubiak is a guy I think of, West Coast offense, loves a run game, has been in different stops, learned from Kyle Shanahan. This past year, leading the Saints, was a play caller for multiple seasons, doing all this. But if he does well with Drake May, he's a year, 2, max 3, and he's gone. Josh McDaniels would be here long term, and there is a familiarity. He knows what he's walking into, and he knows how people work with him. And a guy that's been doing it for a long time knows how to fill out a staff. And that's someone I could not imagine this past season's wide receiver room like playing for Josh McDaniels and him tolerating what was happening in that room alone.
Yeah, same thing goes for Vrabel too, right? I mean, there's no way that those things wouldn't have been happening with him as the head coach. So I guess question for you. So you would be happy with Josh McDaniels as the next offensive coordinator?
Look, 2020, he changed the whole offense to cater to Cam Newton, and they won 7 games. Yep. I think they went 7-9. 2021, he had Mac Jones as a Pro Bowl alternate and then top 6 in scoring. And I'm not going to hold against him too much what he was doing in Vegas because it was Jimmy Garoppolo, but he schemes up gimme plays. Like he had Jimmy Garoppolo doing an under center RPO and getting Devontae Adams easy yards. When he was with the Patriots leading the offense, 26 points per game, 5th in points per play, 0.43. Buffalo was first with 0.45. 7th in red zone scoring percentage. And they were having 2.8 offensive touchdowns a game. That would have been 9th in the NFL this season, what they were doing in 2021. With Mac Jones, Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne in year 1. Kendrick Bourne's a good piece. Build around him. But they had nobodies. And it's just like the skill set. And working in guys like Jonnu Smith, they couldn't figure out. I would be for Josh McDaniels because that's a guy that has adapted his playbook time and time again. It's more than the OC, who are the position coaches. And with Josh McDaniels, what does the timeline look like? Do the Patriots go to him like, Josh, look, you want to get some more Lombardi trophies? You got 6. You want to get more rings? You could get 3 with this kid. Just stay. Don't leave. Don't be an idiot. Some people are meant to be head coaches. Others are meant to be coordinators. You are a coordinator. Like that has to be the serious conversation. And it has to be something, you know what, fine. One day you want to do it. Don't leave for 5 years. Like we want to build something here. Mike's a head coach. Don't leave for 5 years. And then let me see who is under Josh McDaniels. For the guys out there who can he groom to be the next offensive coordinator, next play caller for the Patriots if he does leave.
Yeah. And again, I kind of mentioned this off the top too. Like, I think that is the biggest benefit of Josh McDaniels. I would say like the one, thing that makes me a little hesitant is just, does it feel like you're kind of going, maybe not backwards, but you're going into the past in order to, revive this thing, as opposed to going with a future guy, whether it's, I'll bring up the name Caley again, or, a lot of the guys that, I think, those young and up and coming offensive coordinators, you kind of are going into the past when it comes to Josh McDaniels. But, I certainly, with that said, I can imagine him, kind of, fast forwarding his timeline, when it comes to, taking some of those aspects of, the new and offensive schemes, I could see him taking some of that and implementing it. I do think, he's smart enough and knowledgeable enough and everything like that when it comes to it. So I think I would be, and I might've said this last week as well, I would be content, I would be fine with it when it comes to McDaniels, but there is like some hesitance when it comes to it. But again, the biggest advantage is the fact that he would not be going anywhere. You say 5 years. I truly don't think he'll get another offensive job. Another head coaching job. The fact that both of his head coaching jobs lasted less than 2 years. Yeah. And the Colts thing on top of that, I just think that, head coaching, there's no head coaching vacancy that's going to go to Josh McDaniels. So, if you're looking for the long term, that's certainly one part that makes it attractive.
I never underestimate how dumb some owners are out there, though. I really don't. There's going to be someone, Drake May, putting up big numbers. Drake May, if he continues on the trajectory to be what I think he can be, which will be a top 5 quarterback in the league, they're going to be like, who's calling plays? Who developed him? Oh, is that Alex Van Pelt guy for a year? Oh, Josh McDaniels been with them the last 5. There are dumb owners out there. If it's not McDaniels in your eyes then, and it could break away from Thomas Brown, Marcus Brady, I mentioned a Clint Kubiak, who in your eyes would make sense as an offensive coordinator then, Sean?
I don't want to keep saying the name, but I truly like Caley, and I just like the fact that.
But he's never called plays before, so why?
Because I think you're kind of getting one of those guys at the ground floor, before he, you're letting him, reach his potential with you. And, eventually, maybe that means that, 5 years or 6 years down the line, he does go somewhere else to get a head coaching role. But I just think, the fact that he was sought after, not only here, I mean, the Patriots offered him a contract last year under Gerard Mayo. They wanted him to be here. And the fact that he's like, you know what, I'm going to get another year under McVay, I think there's a lot to that. And I think he was pretty well respected when he was here. And then he gets 2 years under McVay. So I think it has a lot to do with that. And, so I would go Caley. I know the younger LaFleur, Mike LaFleur. I know he's the offensive coordinator there. He's been the offensive coordinator under McVay. Again, not calling plays, but he's been the offensive coordinator there. And there's kind of like some weird, tentacle sort of connections. I was looking it up, and Vrabel hired Matt LaFleur, when he got to Tennessee. Obviously Matt LaFleur only lasts a year, goes to Green Bay, now the head coach there. But, could it be the same sort of thing with the younger brother now coming in as Vrabel's next head coach? I mean, as Vrabel's next offensive coordinator. I think it's interesting. And both of those guys, again, not play calling experience, but both experience under McVay. And the fact that you have a veteran coach atop them, I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah. I need play calling experience, and I think that's like my checked box number one. Have you called plays? You've been around Sean McVay, great. Mm-hmm. Have you called plays? Now look at Liam Cohn, worked out tremendously. So it's like I'm not gonna completely push that away, but also Liam Cohn, like in the college ranks, called plays. Wasn't just complete with the Rams. I need more than a former tight ends coach. I see what you're saying, and it's also with Nick Caley sought after, offered a contract by the Patriots. That doesn't mean too much to me because of how bad they were at putting together that coaching staff, where they had no experience. Yeah. All they had was Elliot Wolf calling shots pretty much because he had to go through his Rolodex of who he knew. And he goes, Nick Caley, spent time with McVay, let's get him in here. And I feel like he kind of looked around and he said no because he was like, I see what's happening here. I'm good. I'd rather be around Sean McVay and be there as long as I can. Then I know I'll be looking for a job in a year. So, while I'm with the Rams, let me just stick here for a little bit. As a passing game coordinator, maybe you elevate him. Maybe it is Josh McDaniels, associate head coach and offensive coordinator. Like, you could play with the titles, and Nick Caley's right under McDaniels. Yeah, sure. Fine with that. Tight ends coach / passing game coordinator. Fine. I'm cool with that. I need a play caller. And that's why I think of Clint Kubiak. He's with the Saints. He's with the 49ers, called plays with the Broncos once Nathaniel Hackett got fired. Yeah, not the best endorsement, but also he's seen literally how not to head coach, how not to manage games. That's important. And you had that Saints offense that had Alvin Kamara in this day and age set his season high in rushing yards, had him be one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL early on in the season. Yes, they hit their wall, but how he's able to get the most out of very little with Derek Carr, Jake Hayner, Spencer Rattler. Give them Drake May. That's it. But I think all roads lead back to Josh McDaniels. What about defensive coordinators? So Mike Reiss put out an article on ESPN, and he pointed out who the coordinators are. The ones he's looking at, Terrell Williams. I've highlighted him before. 6 years of Mike Vrabel in Tennessee, defensive line coach with him. Now the D-line coach, run game coordinator with the Lions. Bobby King, Philadelphia Eagles inside linebackers coach, was with Vrabel in Tennessee. Ryan Crow, the Dolphins outside linebackers coach, was with Vrabel in Tennessee. Then Chris Harris, Titans passing game coordinator, cornerbacks coach right now, which is a carryover from Vrabel's coaching staff. Terrell Williams makes sense. I mean, his final season there, he was an assistant head coach for Mike Vrabel. There was a story that came out when Vrabel was let go. Like, he said to Terrell Williams, the bond is real. He hugged him, said he wished he was looking forward to seeing his son play hockey more. Massachusetts, hockey state, Terrell. You get really good. You're up in Detroit right now. You get really good hockey experience for your kid up here in Mass. I just think the bond is there. The relationship is there. And what Terrell Williams helped Mike Vrabel with the most wasn't the X's and O's. It was building relationships. Mike Vrabel has highlighted that. I think it's Terrell Williams. I think it would be a good hire. This list I'm at peace with. And again, Sean, the same way I look, you got a guy that's an inside linebackers coach. Look what he did with Zach Bond in Philly and Bobby King. That's a guy that was drafted as an on-ball linebacker, edge defender with with New Orleans. New Orleans was never more than a special teams player. Zach Bond was a Pro Bowler this past season. Ryan Crow with the Dolphins outside linebackers, they always excelled and played well, and he learned from Anthony Weaver. You get those guys in, again, passing game coordinator, maybe elevate them, linebackers coach overall, run game coordinator. I wouldn't be surprised to see a reunion of some sorts for a lot of these assistants coming to New England to play under Vrabel.
Yeah, and I just want to second everything that you're saying about Terrell Williams. I think, and not just the fact that, Reiss came out today and said that it was, he was leaning that way or like that was his favorite, whatever the wording was on that. But I think it makes a lot of sense as well because of when you look at the Patriots, like they need, they have, Keon White and they have, I'm blanking on his name right now. Christian Barmore, sorry. They have those two guys, these young and up and coming guys. And, Christian Gonzalez is obviously probably the top defender when you're talking about that. But just to have a, defensive line coach come in, or, at least someone with as much experience, on the defensive line. He's been working with that unit for, 13 years at this point. I also went back and just today when I saw that, Jeffrey Simmons. So he worked with Jeffrey Simmons on the Titans. Obviously, Jeffrey Simmons, as good as he is, and Jeffrey Simmons had a lot of good to say about him. Really lauded him for his talked about his passion for the game. There was his respect and how he's able to keep it real was a quote. He's able to keep it real with the players he has. And then just, the fact that he's, with that, it's holding them accountable and, being honest with them. Both things that Mike Vrabel, said a few times this week during his introductory press conference, forming those relationships and how important it was to be honest with those players. So I think when when you talk about a lot of that stuff, I do think that, Terrell Williams makes a lot of sense, both because how he could help, those guys, Christian Barmore and, Keon White, among others, but, those two specifically, as well as, his ability to kind of create relationships with the guys he has.
In an Athletic article covering Mike Vrabel, he told defensive line coach Terrell Williams he was hoping to see Williams' son graduate from high school, attend more of his hockey games. He thanked him for He thanked him for teaching Vrabel how to better connect with his players. That's what Vrabel's all about. And if Terrell Williams is the guy that helped teach him that, that's what you want. That's someone you want in the building. And you point out how he developed a Jeffrey Simmons. How this defensive line looked under Aaron Glenn as a DC, but when Aiden Hutchinson, your best player, goes down, you sign Zadarius Smith. Well, you trade for him at the deadline. He's an instant impact player. You lose an Aleem McNeil. How a DJ Reader steps up. How he developed a Jeffrey Simmons. Going to the other candidates, how a Ryan Crow, who's now with the Dolphins, how he helped develop Nico Autry, who is a guy that was drafted by Tennessee, had some great seasons under Crow and Williams. How he helped develop an Harold Landry. I'm talking about Crow here too. What Tennessee did so well is drafting players, develop them to be high performers on both sides of the ball. It all circles back around to a Terrell Williams. And look, to give the names, let's say if it's not one of these four, right? And the list should go beyond that because I am big on, if they're doing these searches, bring people in. Christian Parker in that Eagles secondary. He's the Eagles secondary coach. He was with the Packers, with the Broncos, learning from Vance Joseph. Now the Broncos, one of the best defenses in the league. And Ejiro Evero, who is always floated as a head coaching candidate. And he was with Vic Fangio this past season. Jim Leonard, sticking with the Broncos now. Defensive backs coach, passing game coordinator. That's a guy that's been a head coach in the college ranks, knows the AFC East, been a player. Bring him in. And maybe you give him an elevated position under Terrell Williams. Robert Saleh, that has to be the most sought-after name. I think he just ends up in San Fran. He's boys with Kyle Shanahan. But 3.5 years of head coaching experience, as bad as it was with the Jets, that matters. And how good that defense was, despite everything he was dealing with from Brick and Jack Johnson, that matters. And then there's Lou Anarumo. Coaching since 89, NFL since 2012, 5 years as defensive coordinator with the Bengals. And that's a guy that doesn't seem like he would leave in that role. Defensive side, I'm not too worried about because also you have Mike Vrabel, who is a defensive-minded coach. But, and when you had Logan Ryan on last week, for a defensive-minded coach like Mike Vrabel, he salvaged Ryan Tannehill's career. He helped Derrick Henry get to be what he is. He saw A.J. Brown, wanted him, and helped develop him into being what he is. Jonnu Smith wanted him, drafted him, and he's the reason Jonnu Smith got that big contract from the Patriots. Didn't work out. Now look at Jonnu Smith with the Dolphins in the right system. He knows what he's doing on the offensive side. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to check out today's episode of Nesson's Daily Sports Podcast. Boston has entered the chat. We cover all things Boston sports as well as trending sports topics from around the country. Available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Twitch, and wherever else you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube on Nesson, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and leave a comment as well. So, Sean, I'm not going to lie. I was very disappointed with some news over the weekend. It caused me to bother our producer, Ethan, on his off day. He works hard. I try to give him space. God knows that he needs it, especially from me, dealing with me all week. Mike Borgonzi's been hired, general manager of the Titans. I'm astonished he lasted this long in Kansas City. I'm surprised he wasn't more sought after. I'm not surprised he got the job. Look, this is something that should have been done by the Patriots. And this is a two-part heartbreak for me in all this. I've laid it out, Sean. I'm going to do it just to catch our listeners and viewers up. Been a Chiefs assistant general manager right now. He started out in Kansas City since 2009. Rose through the ranks with Brett Veach, his right-hand man. He's been a scout and football ops, assistant director of pro scouting, director of player personnel, director of football ops, now assistant GM. He directs their Chiefs professional and college scouting as well as on top of being an assistant GM. When he was with the Chiefs, they've drafted, the Trent McDuffies and the Travis Kelce's and the Patrick Mahomes. No. It's the Nick Boltons, the Creed Humphreys, the Trey Smiths, the Leo Chenals, the Isaiah Pacheco's, Rashee Rice, Chamari Connor, those guys that are starters and contributors to back-to-back Super Bowl champions. A guy that, when you look to his free agency, knows how to navigate the cap to keep Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Travis Kelce all under contract within this dynasty. For a team that's been now to 7 straight AFC championship games. 7 effing straight ever since Patrick Mahomes has taken over as a quarterback. Yes, 15 does a lot for the Chiefs, but the Patriots have 10. He knows how to build a team around a really good quarterback. You want someone that can do that. And I wanted a general manager to come in because you needed someone to lead that room. I understand giving Elliott Wolf a chance, but guess what? You bring in a Mike Borgonzi, and you go to him. You're running the show, and you go to Elliott. Has it been great? You know what? You learned from Bill. Obviously, it's a reason he was fired. You're going to learn from Borgonzi. Like it or leave it. That's your choice, Elliott. We want you to stay. We do like you. And guess what? Your EVP, you could get back into that assistant GM role. You and Ryan Cowden work your way up and develop from there. And Sean, with all of it, and I never give credence to, he's from here. He grew up there. Because if that was the case, then DaCosta, who's the GM with the Ravens, would be leading the Pats right now because he's from Taunton. But he's not going to leave a place because he's been there since 1990, effing 8. And he's leading one of the best front offices. But with this one, it's legit. Borgonzi grew up in Everett. His dad was a season ticket holder for the Patriots for 20 years, and he has said openly, he did an interview with Phil Perry back in 2023 about the opening for the GM job or the front office job for the Pats, and he said, that's a dream job. Any personnel guy would love to get in there, put their influence on bringing that culture and that franchise back to a championship contender. So I'm 2 parts where my heart is broken here, Sean. You should have gone Mike Borgonzi, bless you, my friend, because that's a job, a guy that's in his 50s, he's not going anywhere. Like, he's staying there until he retires, but also he doesn't take that Titans job if there's not a possibility of the Patriots job. This is the front office. It's Elliott Wolf and it's Ryan Cowden. There's not going to be a general manager that comes in, and that kills me for go get a Ray Agnew with Detroit, go get a Mike Borgonzi with the Chiefs. Instead, nope, nothing. And that is awful. Like how the Patriots treated the head coaching search last season, where they didn't actually do it, and that's what they're doing this season. Cool, we got Ryan Cowden, who's the number 2 to Elliott Wolf. Awesome, you got Matt Groh out of there. Put him in a locker. That's fine. I'm cool with that. He's done nothing. But you need someone to lead that. And I understand Mike Vrabel has his input. He wants final say. Sean, the successful teams in the postseason that we're looking at, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Rams, the Eagles, they have strong-minded, very influential head coaches. They have general managers. They have people in those roles. The Chiefs have a president of football ops and a general manager and Brett Veach and an assistant GM and Mike Borgonzi and Andy effing Reid. And the Rams do the same thing. You cannot tell me, Mike Vrabel wants final say, so that's why you're not going to get a general manager? No, miss me with that. The successful franchises that we're seeing across the league, the Vikings as well, with the Packers, the 49ers, there's general managers and there's influential head coaches. The Patriots are not above that. And that is complete malpractice in this offseason that they're not doing that.
Well, I love everything you said. I appreciate the passion too, George. There's a lot going on there. A lot to unpack. I will admit the first person I thought of when I saw that tweet from Schefter, Rappaport, whoever had it, the first person I thought of was you. So if that matters at all, it
does.
But the last point you just talked about, and this is going to be a question that I had to you because I did think of that, and the fact that the Vrabel and all this, like, would he or would any head coach coming in, would they want that? And I completely understand your point, especially with all the examples you gave. I think that was, that's completely understandable. That makes a lot of sense. I do think that, based on some of the reports that came out of Tennessee when Vrabel was fired, it did seem like he wanted a little bit more control over personnel. There's since been reports that have kind of pushed back on that a little bit. But I do think if the Patriots went to Vrabel and say, hey, we're gonna bring in Mike Borgonzi, how would you feel about it? I can't help but think there would be a little hesitation on his end, just because it's like two alphas, right? It's two guys going head to head over it. So that would be my only thing, but you kind of already addressed that point as well. So I don't know if you want to rehash it, but
my thing with that, Sean, is like he spent the last season with the Browns learning about coaching and personnel. He learned from Andrew Berry, the general manager of the Browns. Again, Andrew Berry, GM of the Browns, working with Kevin Stefanski. You go through it all. With the Eagles, it's Howie Roseman. With the Commanders, it's Adam Peters, completely revamping that roster. I'm not going to bring up your Cowboys. I'm sorry. Giants, I'm not going to use Joe Shane either. Not the best example. But with the Lions, it's Brad Holmes. With the Vikings, it's Monty Ossenfort. With the Packers, it's Brian Gutekunst. With the Bears, it's a Ryan Poles, and then above him, a Kevin Warren. Like, I'm going through. With the Buccaneers, it's Mike Greenberg. Like, I'm listing every team that has this existence. So are you making this choice? And that's why I can't believe, like, I'm just going through these teams, successful or not, head coaching-wise, that it's worked with them. I'm not going to buy that you can't make it work with a Mike Vrabel. That's what it comes back to me of, hey, this is the formula that works. It's working for all these teams. And you're not going to bring in a Mike Borgonzi. To me, it sounds more of like Vrabel's going, I'll give Elliott Wolf a chance. Well, you missed out on Borgonzi to the Titans. And now you're going to miss out on a Ray Agnew, I do believe, to another team. Because that guy, been with the team since 2021. Same thing. Their resume speaks for itself for drafted and how they addressed free agency. And I know the reports that came out about the Titans. But keep in mind, for him, it was John Robinson traded away A.J. Brown. He was adamantly against that. Just watch a clip from draft night. So, yes, Mike Vrabel, in a way, is like, I need input as a head coach. You cannot trade away guys like that without telling me and that's fine. Have the input. Collaboration, I'm not against. And then he had Ryan Cowden, who's going to be working under Elliott Wolf. And Ryan Cowden, his resume between Carolina and Tennessee, has been working in personnel since 2000. The list of guys drafted under him is very impressive. Couple bad years, but very impressive. And that's fine. At the end, Rand Carthen, I mean, he lasted 2 years and he got fired. Rand Carthen, who they brought over from the 49ers, he got fired right after Mike Vrabel. So was it a Vrabel working with the GM issue? Was it a Vrabel being abrasive issue? Or is it Amy Adams Strunk trying to have too much power and trying to do a little too much as an owner? So I do not buy, not to sound like someone that's like caping for Vrabel. Yes, he had his issues with the front office. I think he had more issues with ownership trying to do too much. And that's my thing with that. You bring in a Borgonzi who has a resume. You bring in a Ray Agnew who has the resume and has proven it and done it elsewhere. Learned from someone else. That would be the best thing for the Pats. And hey, Elliott, talking to Elliott Wolf here, that'd be the best thing for you, dude. Because then that prepares you. Oh, he learned under Borgonzi. He learned under Agnew. Other teams out there that go, let's bring him as a GM. That's where professional growth for Elliott Wolf and the best thing for the Pats, I think it all worked in one. I really don't put too much credence in Vrabel got fired. It was ownership, and they weren't winning games at the end. But also, they were dealing with rookie Will Levis and a washed-up Ryan Tannehill. So, like, do with that what you want, man. And Treylon Burks is a bust to replace A.J. Brown. Like, there's so much into that, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. And just it kind of, I feel like the Commanders has some sort of, you see Adam Peters come in and, exactly what he was able to do. I mean, he completely revitalized, everything. He turned everything around in a year, to the point that, and I know you touched on it before, the Patriots are picking fourth this year and the Commanders are on their way to the NFC Championship game. So Bingo. I just, to see all that happen because, again, you have to put so much, you have to give the GM, in this case, so much credit. It's certainly, to me, it shows, how much you can really revitalize a franchise, with a GM like that.
Hey, let's get into that. But first, if you're enjoying the show, be sure to check out Foxboro Rush every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for all things Patriots football with Mike Vrabel hired and the Patriots picking number 4 overall. The Patriots offseason is going to be a busy one. Available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Twitch, and wherever else you get your podcast. Sean, I love it. A year ago, the Commanders, also owned by Dan Snyder, mind you. Commanders are picking number 2 overall. Patriots are picking 3. Dan Snyder pushed out. Thank God. Everyone's better off for that. Josh Harris, majority owner, brought in. Hires Adam Peters. Brings him over from the 49ers, where he was a VP of player personnel and assistant GM, to one of the best front offices. Just look at how they draft. They have all pros in every room, it seems like. Bring in Adam Peters. Bring in Dan Quinn. Fire Ron Rivera. Clean house. Bring in Dan Quinn. Hire Cliff Kingsbury, an actual offensive coordinator. You could have your view on him in Arizona, actual offensive coordinator. What did the Patriots do a year ago? Fire Bill Belichick. Elevate Gerard Mayo. Don't do a coaching search. Elevate Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh. Don't do a GM search. The Commanders are a game away from the Super Bowl. The Patriots are picking 4th overall. Now, the Patriots roster was so void of talent. The Commanders wasn't that much better either. What gets me is with Washington, led by Adam Peters, they brought in 22 free agents. Set aside the guys that they signed that were within the building. They let 18 players walk, signed 22 free agents. While the Pats let 11 players walk, signed 12 free agents. And first off, think of the guys. Nick Lever, Chuks Okorafor, KJ Osborne didn't even make it a full first season. And then the guys that re-signed, Mike Onwenu, Hunter Henry. It's fine. Jabril Peppers dealt with his issues off the field and wasn't around. Washington drafted Jaden Daniels, got Cliff Kingsbury, and look where they are now. The Patriots drafted Drake May, hired Alex Van Pelt, never called plays before. You just see the difference in actually investing, actually doing a head coaching search, actually going out and finding the best GM candidate does for a team. And again, I said it. Once Gerard Mayo was fired, once Mike Vrabel was rumored to be hired, it's taking more than a head coach to turn this thing around. We will see what the Patriots do. But the Commanders, ahead of schedule, way ahead of schedule, are the literal perfect example of investing in the team, ownership being bought in, putting the money where your mouth is, and you see the rest takes care of itself. Hire the right people, let the football people make decisions with football, and look at where the Commanders are now. Up a little bit of technical issues. Lost Sean there. And Sean's back. Podcasting, baby.
Some technical difficulties. I'm coughing. It's been a show today.
But yeah, at the end, just the quick recap, Sean, is that you look at what the Commanders have done. They're the case in point on what happens when you invest. Actual head coaching search, actual GM search, and within the assistant coaches too, taking your offensive coordinator, hiring serious, and not just like laughing in the interview rooms like we heard with rumors from New England. No, Josh Harris was serious about this whole thing. Dan Quinn, defensive-minded, serious about this whole thing, and look what the Commanders are, look where the Patriots are.
Yeah, I also think it's important to say, like, we and, fans, and I feel like media members and myself, kind of look at this like a multi-year, 3, 4, 5-year rebuild. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be like that. In a lot of cases it is, but it wasn't in Washington. And again, it's just the executive that came in, the GM, he had an eye for talent. First of all, he's getting a lot of, kind of second tier, even third tier free agents that, they certainly weren't gone on the first day of free agency. And he's getting those guys on, 1 year, shorter term deals at the very least. Yeah. And, so he had an eye for talent, and those veterans, like, they mixed at good spots, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Noah Brown, I know Dante Fowler, they had a lot of guys that came in, and it just, they meshed really well. So it was like, not only did he have an eye for talent, but he also, Bobby Wagner, a perfect example, like, he knew what his head coach wanted. He knew what his head coach wanted in players, and he went out and he got those guys. So I do think, like, it shows that if you have an executive that can, has a good eye for talent and, really knows what he's doing and can work with the head coach and knows what the head coach is looking for, it doesn't need to be a prolonged rebuild. Yeah. And maybe that's not to say that the Patriots are going to be in the AFC Championship game next year either. It shouldn't be like it's 4 or 5 years away still.
Exactly. Even think of And like you mentioned, like they're not the most sought after, but the quiet signings that pulled through. Tyler Biotish signed him from the Cowboys within their division. That's a 3-year deal. Jeremy Chin as a safety was with the Panthers, now with the Commanders. You mentioned Bobby Wagner. Guys that are all in different position group rooms, all significant guys for the culture, starters. And you point it like a GM just goes. It doesn't have to spend all the money in one place, right? But when you spend it the right way and get the right signings and have an eye for that. When you compare it where, like, that's a guy Adam Peters brought in. All right, the outside signings that Elliot Wolf did, Chuks Okorafor went AWOL week 2. KJ Osborne literally could not be active on game days. Like, the joke of the signings they had there, Nick Leverett was cut. Yeah. So, like, cool. Even the quiet signings, like the same level signings as a Bobby Wagner, let's say it's a KJ Osborne. The guy was an awful fit. Like, and that's a reflection on coaching too, but that's where it goes into. The Commanders did it perfect. And let's see what the Commanders are next year, Sean, because they could be like the Texans. Texans was everyone darling, Super Bowl talk. That's going to happen with the Commanders no matter what. No matter what happens in the NFC Championship game. Hey, I like the Commanders to win the Super Bowl. Jaden, all of this is going to happen. Let's see where they are. And we're not saying worst to first, but the turnaround can be there. And most importantly, you bring in the right GM. Man, the Commanders didn't waste a year of Jaden Daniels. The Patriots better not waste a year or 2 of Drake May. Let him develop, get him with some serious people around him, some serious talent, and that'll help him in his career long term, not just short term.
Yeah, and the Patriots have a better coach now too. So I mean, I think that we can't lose sight of that. Like, they had a first year coach come in that was completely over his head. Now they have a veteran in the room who, he might have his own eye for talent. Who knows? So I would expect it's a much quicker turnaround, now than I would have expected, a few weeks ago. We'll say that.
Yeah. Hey, he's Sean McGuire. I'm George Balekji. This was Foxboro Rush. Appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. New episodes dropping 3 days a week, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime. If you're watching on Nesson's YouTube page, hit the subscribe button, or you can watch on Facebook and Twitch as well. I'm GB. He's Sean T. Have a good day, everyone. We'll see you later this week.